Good morning. I'd like to call the Door County Board of Supervisors meeting to order on Tuesday, October 25th at 9 a.m. Would you please join me in a pledge allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call. Miss a bunch.
Dale, can you sign in? Can you hit present?
Sorry.
Okay.
You need Rodney
Nope,
yet?
I got Rodney.
Oh, no,
He's not here.
okay, no, it just popped in now. It didn't show up at first.
Yeah. Okay, we have 20 present and 1 absent. Presentation of the agenda. All in favor? Aye. Correspondence. Any additional correspondence to add? Public comment.
Sure. We can start first with those online. If you dialed in, you could *9, or those are in via remotely to your computer, you can hit the raise your hand, and I can give you the floor to make a comment, and I'll ask 2 times for any comments. First time, anyone who'd like to speak? And for the second time, anyone who'd like to speak? Seeing none, we can defer to those in the room.
Is there anybody in the audience?
Good morning.
Good morning, Susan.
Susan Coe, 2099 Sunrise Shore Road, Sturgeon Bay. It's wonderful to see all of you. I'm here this morning as the chair of the League of Women Voters of Door County. Am I loud enough here? I'm here today to convey the League's support of one of the items on your agenda this morning, the bullying harassment ordinance. As many of you know, the League has been involved with a multi-year study of the systems in Door County that serve people dealing with mental health and or substance use, either in their own lives or as family members or friends. As part of that project, we have been following the county's work through its committees and this board. Throughout the study process and our current advocacy efforts, we have been impressed by the continuing efforts of county and community leaders to develop strategies and tools to improve outcomes for people dealing with mental health and or substance use issues and other challenges, including involvement in the criminal justice system. The League advocates based on positions it has developed by a process of study and member agreement. It has long advocated for appropriate alternatives to incarceration and other strategies that can promote rehabilitation and responsible re-entry into community life. As such, we strongly support such county programs as the Door County Treatment Court and the juvenile and adult diversion programs. We applaud and thank those of you who have worked to put them in place. Our monitoring efforts have brought the bullying harassment ordinance proposal on your agenda this morning to our attention. It is our understanding and belief that the availability of such an ordinance can provide an additional tool for use in the diversion programs to encourage participation in strategies which use the principles of restorative justice to promote healing for victims as well as offenders. We support these efforts and urge you to adopt this ordinance. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment? Okay, we'll move along. Any supervisor's response?
Approval of the minutes of the September 27th, 2022 County Board meeting.
Need to use our buttons.
We have a motion and a second. Any additions, deletions, corrections, grammatical errors, other remarks to be made? If not, by voice vote, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? County Administrator.
Sure. Just an update in the staff memo with the projects. Obviously, it's kind of fun as you're getting closer to the end of the year to start seeing some of those things being completed. As you can see, I think one of the ones that's kind of exciting was the bathrooms are all completed now at several of the parks. I sent out some pictures of that before, so we actually got some positive comments related to that as well. Likewise, the Bryan facility is in its final stages of this installing the equipment, which is great news. So we'll be ready for the winter season for that, which will be great. But other than that, I can take any questions, but other than that, multiple projects are still on target or in progress. But again, some of those are not being completed, which is great news. So.
Any questions for Ken? Okay. Resolutions, resolution 2022-91 in memoriam to Randy Halstead. I have a motion and a second, please. A motion and a second. I will read the memoriam. To the Door County Board of Supervisors, whereas Randy Halstead passed away on October 2nd, 2022, and whereas Supervisor Halstead was first elected to the Door County Board of Supervisors and served from April 2014 through April 2020, and whereas Supervisor Halstead represented Supervisor District 16, including the town of Egg Harbor, Ward 1, the town of Jacksonport, Ward 1, and whereas Supervisor Halstead served on several committees during his tenure, including Agriculture and Extension, Emergency Services, Property, Land Conservation, Facilities and Parks, and Highway and Airport Committee, and whereas Supervisor Halstead also served as Chairman of the Agriculture and Extension Committee, now therefore be it resolved that the Door County Board of Supervisors assembled in regular session this 25th day of October 2022 extend our sincere sympathy to the family of Randy Halstead with his acknowledgement and of his dedication to the citizens of Door County. Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Would anybody else care to make any comments? Joel.
Everybody's aware of the memorial service.
It's on November 5th, Jacksonport at 3 o'clock, apparently.
Would you just repeat that again? What time?
3 o'clock, 3 to 5 is what was posted or memo. So.
Thank you. Resolution 2022-92, appointment to the County Board Subunit Broadband Committee. Dave Engelbert.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2022-92. It's the appointment of Jason Berry to fill a position on the broadband committee. His resume is attached.
Ken, do you have any comments?
Sure. The only comment on this one is we did have one seat that was open, and we thought this was a great balance in terms of their experience. They actually have, someone might wonder, well, why an SBU? Because that's with that, but they actually have a lot of different knowledge on infrastructure that also extends well beyond the city. So that we thought was a great balance to our committee. So that's why we're making that recommendation.
By voice vote, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Resolution 2022-93, Door County 22 through 2026 Hazard Mitigation Plan. Joel?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2022-93, please. This is a continuing application grant that Dan Kane files for every 5 years for the county. It keeps us in the running for funding from FEMA and different government agencies for disaster mitigation opportunities.
Any questions?
Very long and extensive.
Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, it was interesting to read through that. I see that in the process this time, with this renewal or this 5-year update, that the village of Forestville chose not to participate. And I was just wondering if anybody could speak to, does that mean like if there's some sort of a issue that they don't get covered, or how does that work? I don't know if anybody can comment to that or not. I don't know.
Morning. The plan itself is contracted through, and Becky Kerwin should be online as well. She was the lead planner on this project. It's my understanding that through the process, several attempts were made via phone and email and just hadn't gotten a response. So we had to move forward without them. I'm not sure reasons why, but that's just my understanding on that end of it. Nothing that I'm aware of that's any issue.
I was just curious. Thanks.
Anybody else? All right, by voice vote, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Resolution 2022-94, approval of the agreement with Vercadia for 5 years camera licensing and software. Dave Engelbert,
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2022-94. The agreement with Vercadia for 5 years with the camera licensing and software. It was approved by the administrative committee. It is a 5-year agreement, and it has subject to review by the corporation council. I think he has already looked at it. It deals with the camera system that we have and the storage and management software for those systems. And the terms are better than what we had before.
any questions? We will go to the voter board. That's passing the vote of 20 yes, 1 absent. 2022-95, approve of the agreement with Cisco for 5 years for the phone system licensing. Dave Engelbert,
Make a motion to approve resolution 2022-95, the approval of agreement with Cisco. This also was approved by the administrative committee with corporation council review. Cisco is our current phone system, and the system is expected to last 10 to 15 years. We've just concluded a 3-year agreement, and this is a 5-year extension.
any questions? We'll go to the voter board. This passes with a majority of 20 yes, 1 absent. Ordinances 2022-10 speed zone on County D. Roy,
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to approve ordinance number 2022-10 for the speed zone in County HD, which is a 1 mile stretch.
questions? Dave,
I'll be a broken record. I wish we could have had a page with the map in it. I can certainly go looking for it, but it would have been nice to have seen that section of the road in the packet.
Nissa?
I'm just wondering what the current speed limit is there. You know, I mean, it says to create, but I thought, you know, is there something already established? Currently for a speed limit there?
Right. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, 1 mile stretch right off of Highway 57 on County Road D, which goes, that 1 mile goes up to County Road Y. And what reason why it's being requested is that there are 7 residents on that road. And at one junction on top of the hill, there are 2 residents kitty corner from one another. And it's a very dangerous situation. The sheriff's department has looked at this and did a speed study. The highway department has looked at this and said, all recommended that we reduce the speed to 45.
So it's currently 55?
Yes.
I was just curious because it doesn't say on here what it was before.
So I had no idea.
Now we do.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Since it's an ordinance, we go to the voter board. It's passed 20 yes, 1 absent. Ordinance 2022-11, bullying harassment ordinance. Joel?
Like to make a motion to approve ordinance 2022-11, bullying harassment ordinance for the county code.
We have a motion and a second. Questions, Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just curious where this came from. Is this replacing anything or have we just never had a bullying ordinance in the county? And then is this then we're coming up, we're looking at amendments to chapter 31. Is this like something that'll just become part of chapter 31? As it's sort of the public nuisance or whatever, the public piece.
Hey, good morning, everyone. We've had a harassment ordinance. We have not had a bullying portion, so that was incorporated into this ordinance. This was an amendment or bullying ordinance that was requested by both the sheriff's office and the district attorney's office. The reason behind this request is not to assess forfeitures through ordinance to minors necessarily, but to bring minors who are bullying into a juvenile diversion program, which is an alternate course to the citation process, where when they receive a citation for alleged bullying, that the district attorney can say, well, we can either go forward with the fine and going through the court process, or we can put you into Plan B, a juvenile diversion program, where they can incorporate some restorative justice practices, where it's more of a teaching opportunity to teach the bullier, how is your conduct affecting these victims, for lack of a better word. It's an opportunity possibly for the victim to express to the bullier how it makes them feel. Possible some incorporation, maybe you could bring in school officials. How does bullying disrupt the schools? So this ordinance is designed to be an avenue to get people to take part in the juvenile diversion program. Without this ordinance, it could still be offered, but it would be a voluntary admission into the program. The juvenile or the parents would have to agree to it. Where when we have the ordinance behind it, it still is voluntary, but it encourages them to avoid a citation to go into the juvenile diversion program.
Rodney?
Questions?
Yeah, I had a question. So I guess it's broken up into two parts. It's got the bullying section and the other section of the harassment.
Yep.
So the harassment section seems more clear in terms of it's referring to the Wisconsin statutes. So you can look at each of those Wisconsin statutes and it's very clear language on what you would do to incur the fine or to be committing the crime, let's say. What's the thing you should not do? What's prohibited? The bullying part, I think, is a little more vague to me. Like it says at the top, the bullying behavior may, and then it lists those A through G. So I'm assuming if it's may, it's kind of like may or may not include, so I'm just trying to understand if that could be written more clear. That's also like, as an example, if you were to look at like 247.012, it says it's unlawful use of telephone. That was cited there under the harassment.
Yep.
So it says, following is guilty of Class B misdemeanor with intent to frighten, intimidate, threaten, abuse, harass, makes a telephone call, threatens to inflict injury, physical harm to person or property of any person. So those are just very clear. So it's less vague on the law.
And there is no state statute that I'm aware of governing bullying. This is not a novel ordinance to Door County either. This is, I don't want to say a model ordinance, but it's very common to several municipalities, counties in this state. It is very vague and the reasoning I can come up for that is it's to cast a wide net. It's extremely difficult to define something like bullying because inevitably, if you are very specific, you're going to leave instances out, which we can say, well, that's bullying.
Right.
And the district attorney will say, or the officer will say, well, it's not specified in our ordinance, so we can't do anything about it. So it's the situation where it's very hard to define, but everybody knows bullying when they see it. And by creating a broad definition of bullying, we can allow our law enforcement, our district attorney's office, and the judges to really be the gatekeepers and to determine, is this a violation? Is this not? Am I going to issue the citation? Am I going to prosecute this? Am I going to find this alleged bullier guilty of this? So yes, it is very vague. There are some downsides that do come with that, but I think it's a workable ordinance and it's been in practice around the state in various municipalities. So that's the reason for it being vague, is to give some flexibility to encompass all types of bullying that may arise.
I guess as an example, the beginning makes sense to me. It says bullying is deliberate, intentional behavior, words or actions intended to cause fear, intimidation, or harm. That's pretty clear, right? It's just all the other stuff, the may part, those are kind of like examples, I guess. Because I mean, any of those A through G would have to be combined with the beginning definition. Am I right on that? Or
Yes. It would have to be bullying, and bullying is defined, and then it goes to it may be intended to control others, and it's trying to narrow it in a way where we can say, well, is this bullying or is this not? But in reality, it's one of those things that you know it when you see it, and it will probably fit into one or more of this A through G.
okay, so that's giving examples, and then if you're as that definition, if you meet that definition, you might have some bullying that's not in A through G. You could still use that ordinance.
Yes, there's a may there. So if you had bullying that did not fall within A through G, and there was an agreement that, that really is bullying, it's just not something detailed. Absolutely, as long as it is a deliberate or intentional behavior, words or action intended to cause fear, intimidation, or harm, it could be bullying. The A through G is just to kind of narrow it in and give people who read an idea of what type of conduct, because that initial definition is so broad.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. That makes more sense, I guess, understanding the context with.
Anybody else? Thank you, Sean.
You're welcome.
We'll go to the voter board. It's passed by a vote of 19 yes, 1 abstention, and 1 absent. Resolution 2022-12, amendment of chapter 31 Door County Code. Joel?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I'd like to make a motion to approve amendatory ordinance 2022-12, amendments to Door County Code, chapter 31, and Corp Council can probably give an explanation again. Might as well stay up there for the next one too.
You got it. Ready? Okay. Chapter 31 is our public protection and safety ordinance. If you look at the old ordinance, it was each separate offense was verbalized in the ordinance and defined. What happens when you do that is, as time progresses, laws change, things become outdated, and you're constantly updating the ordinance. By adopting state statute language as it exists at the time of the violation, we're building in automatic amendments to our public safety, our public protection and safety ordinance. So if the definition of regulation of fireworks change at the state level, we too would change here automatically without having to amend the ordinance, bring it back before the board for things that need updating for whatever reason. There are some ordinance, or not, that's a bad word. There are some violations that are not state statutes, and in the back they've been detailed with language and not a reference to state statute. There's nothing we can really do to get away from that because we have nothing to point to at the state level. But overall, it's just updating the ordinance, taking out language that may no longer be applicable, and referencing many of the violations by pointing them to state statute.
Any questions? Todd?
Do we have a red line copy of what actually changed, or is this entirely?
We did not include a red line copy because it was almost a complete rewrite.
Okay.
And I feel that if we would have done a red line, nobody would have understood what's going on, because 90% of the original would have been redlined, and we would have put in. There was an attachment to the ordinance as it exists today so that you could compare. But I think a red line would have been unreadable because it is a rewrite.
Thank you.
Dave, Enigo?
Page 32 of the packet, actually more of the personal interest. Under privacy, you have use of a drone. That would be an example of one of the items that was not likely in the ordinance originally, being a fairly new technology. I have had a lot of them over my property this last 3 years, just hovering and watching me. Variety of colors, tracked down several of the people. Can you give me a little bit more understanding as to the rest of the people understand the value and use of drones? Do you know anything about that part of it?
As to reference to the state statute, I don't have it memorized, unfortunately, but it is a state regulation. And as things such as that aren't in this ordinance come up, this ordinance can be amended to include new state statutes. And a lot of that is driven by the sheriff's office. Will say, and we've had these situations come up. We haven't been able to cite at a county level ordinance violation. And then it does get brought back before the board for, we're going to add this specific violation. But with regard to drones in particular, I mean, there is a state statute that regulates them. Why?
And then the other side of that would be, how would I go about enacting this ordinance for my personal interest? In other words, what do I do to go through it? And maybe I think Pat was here.
So with this ordinance, these would be enforced by the sheriff's office. So if you think there's a violation, call the sheriff's office, let them know. You could document it. The sheriff's deputy wouldn't necessarily need to see the drone hovering above your residence. But if you had photographic evidence, that they could determine that there was a violation, they could cite based on that. Now with drones, it may be hard to determine whose drone is it in all circumstances, but sometimes people know. It's my neighbor or this person down the street. I see them keeps coming over my residence. I know who it is.
For me, it's mostly out-of-state plates.
Yeah. So, but if if you have the license plate, if you have photos of
So it's not like a civil activity, then it's truly like you're doing 65 and a 45. It's the sheriff department takes over.
Correct. These are criminal violations that we have incorporated into our ordinance to make them non-criminal county ordinance violations. And how the DA handles the state chart versus our ordinance in most circumstances, not all, is the sheriff's deputy would issue the state charge. And in resolving that instance, they would offer to amend to our county ordinance violation, because you're talking about much reduced penalties, jail time goes away, things like that. Forfeiture amount. So it gives the district attorney some flexibility in resolving issues. But yes, these are state criminal violations that we're simply adopting as a county ordinance, and counties don't have authority to jail for violation of ordinance. So it just by its nature, it's a less.
One last comment that I do like.
I do like the transition from verbiage within our ordinance that mimics what was happening at that moment at the state level. I do prefer the statutory references when we are legally allowed to do that. There are instances when we can't.
Yep.
But you named the exact reason. Things change, minute as it might be. And now we have to change our regulations.
Correct.
I like this arrangement better.
Yep, and the ordinance tends to be something that isn't looked at on a consistent basis because it's just so, this ordinance is so large that it's hard to monitor every aspect of it. So things do get missed. And by tying ourselves to the state statute, we can avoid missing something until we get a situation where we need to enforce it and the judge says, yeah, he can't do it anymore.
Or a violation at something in the Supreme Court or something. It determined that portion was valid.
Yep.
Thank you.
Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, also just trying to follow. I understand why you didn't give us a red line version, because it does, I understand that might be confusing, but I'm just trying to follow. I mean, maybe what was changed, or what maybe in general, you have a link in the packet, and I don't know if I wasn't able to see. It only brought up like the first maybe 40 some items, and there's like 112. So like, I guess I feel like I wasn't able to review that. But then there are certain ones like truancy and dropout, public nuisance, animal regulations, outdoor and refuse burning. What was the next one? Inline skating. So there were a few that were like specifically mentioned. Are those ones that were specifically changed and that's why they show up here, or are those just kind of random?
No, those would be sections where either there's not a state statute to attach to, or the state statute just doesn't fit for the county purpose. So we do in that case want to spell out exactly what a violation is.
Okay, so those are the ones. Okay, so those are the ones that don't have state statute connected to them. Okay. And then we had talked about Corp Counsel Emeritus Thomas helping out. Is this part of this kind of this rewriting and recodifying of everything that's kind of what we're going through?
Yes, exactly. These were the first sections of our code that he had tackled. And as we do go through the code, there may be changes to even section 31 as we create new chapters or modify chapters, and we pull out of 31 and stick it in other places. But this was a start that the sheriff had requested to clean it up and to give some discretion to her officers and the district attorney's office. So yes, this is the beginning of that process of going through the whole county code.
So is this, I guess this is chapter 31. So does that mean this is complete for now? And we'll have other things that will be coming forward that we'll be voting on to clean up? Is that?
Yes, that's the plan.
Okay.
Yeah. And this is not in effect until January 1st. The reason we did that was because there's some administrative background work that the sheriff's office has to do to update their software, for lack of a better word, for issuing citations to include these. So they need some time to do that. That's why it is effective, not upon passage and publication, but the first of the year, just to make it workable for them.
And then at the risk of being too narrow in scope, I do have a couple questions.
Sure.
The truancy and dropout one, just when I read through that, it talks about like truancy. Where was that? I apologize. No, I'm on it. I'm trying to find where. Okay, so like under letter D, both 1 and 2 reference a person as being a dropout, where the other A, B, C, they just, or the other ones, maybe not A, but B and C talk about someone being truant. And I guess I didn't know if there was that, is there a certain definition between, or a difference between a dropout and someone who's truant? It just seemed like if we're cleaning up language, we generally, I assume we get away from labeling the person, and we rather define the behavior rather than labeling the person. So that just seemed, I don't know, maybe I'm being picky there, but.
Yeah, and no, you're not. And this may be, it's a legal strategy in drafting this, that dropout is defined in state statute. So we reference that reference for the same reasons as we adopted the other state statutes, is as definitions change, as things change, that definition of dropout will not. There are statutes that authorize counties to adopt this specific section, and we have to comply with their requirements. So you can county adopt this, but this is your general framework. So when we tie it back to the statute, it's one way to do that. So that specific reference, my guess without looking, is that it is defined within the state statute, and we're just latching on to that definition.
Okay. And then another, again, at risk of being too narrow, the inline skating, I just had, didn't really realize it was an issue, or was even a ordinance thing. But I was wondering, okay, inline skates, I know there's people in the county who, and I guess maybe they're called roller skis, but they're, they would fit the definition, I think. Are we differentiating between like rollerblades and roller skis, or and I guess I kind of wonder, does it really matter? Like if the skates are the old fashioned roller rink skates where they're four on a shoe, kind of thing. Like, I guess I'm curious kind of where this came from and why, this almost seems like archaic. I mean, if we don't regulate people jogging on county roads, do we? Why are we regulating people wheeling themselves on a county road? It's their responsibility to not impede traffic, or not, I guess this just seems interesting. That why is this an ordinance, I guess?
I don't know if I can answer why it's an ordinance for the board. I guess it would be a decision on why that was originally adopted. Inline skates are skates with we arranged slightly in a tandem line rather than in pairs. So if you've got shoes with wheels in in a line and versus pairs, then I guess you can't do that.
Yeah, I mean, you get my point though. Like, who cares what mechanism, if it's 4 wheels this way or that way. And then I know, there's people, we got great cross country skiing here. And so people get out in the summertime on those roller skis to practice. And is that illegal, or is that not inline skating? I don't know. I really think this ordinance needs to be looked at. I don't have an answer. All I have is questions, I guess.
And the reason it's in here is it was a section previously. We didn't make it up and add it in here.
Yeah,
for any specific reason. It's just, it was in the old.
Yeah, 94.
Code.
It says 94. So I don't know. I just think there's a lot of vagueness with that. I mean, and again, there's different, I guess, mechanisms or different types of things you can wear on your feet that have wheels on them. And it seems like we're either narrowing it to one, or does it all mean inline, or I don't know. I don't know. It seems like an odd thing to be even have an ordinance for. And potentially people who are out, whatever, just practicing for cross-country skiing are then in violation, but I don't know.
Alexis?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I have comments similar to Supervisor Enigo and Supervisor Boltman, and I started with having a hard time with compulsory attendance policies for students, and then Supervisor Enigo hit on the fact that while these ordinances may be on the books, it's still dependent on individuals to know these and then call them in unless a sheriff's deputy is witnessing it and has time or is following up on those. So it's also about how these are implemented and followed up on by our sheriff's office. So But generally, I think my question, to be a little bit more broad in scope from Supervisor Boltman, is, and based on your responses, maybe we don't have answers to this today, but generally, what can you identify as the differences between the items that you've had pulled out as being different from state statute, as far as, are we being more or less restrictive on these items?
The items that are pulled out, I don't believe there are criminal statutes that we can glob onto.
And it doesn't need
they're
to be
off-
criminal.
Yeah, and that's really what these, that list are misdemeanors and felony crimes that
Okay.
we're adopting by reference.
Okay,
Truancy is, there's nothing that we can say. We're just adopting this language and it's going to move forward. We have to, now we have guidelines on what we have to stay within, that the state will allow us to have such an ordinance. And that's why it's detailed out in full versus just a reference to this. The statute may say a county may adopt an ordinance regulating truancy as long as they may stay within these guidelines.
yeah, and
But-
I understand.
Guys, I had this one thing though, but just to clarify. Grant or the Corporation Council Office did not make any new regulations. So what they did is they took the existing ordinance. Anything that had state references or
Right.
definitions that are in state code, they now just refer to those. Items that we had that were unique to Door County are still in our ordinance, but we did not make inline skating more restrictive or something like that. He didn't go through that. They might have cleaned up stuff, but they did not change the content of the ordinance. So,
That's right.
so that's what we're trying to understand. We did not make anything new. Anything new we would have discussed, like if we would have added a new section on flying kites, right?
Yeah.
We would have specified that and explained that to you. So if you want if you want us to go back and review the code and say, hey, we don't agree with those types of things in the future and we want to take those things out, we can do that. But what this is where you go through what's called codification.
Mhm.
You're taking your existing code and you're trying to either update everything to state references, or you're trying, and then also trying to update the terminology, but you're not in essence changing the substance of what you're enforcing unless it's duly stated through the review process.
Correct. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. If I wasn't clear on that, I apologize. That this is just a cleaning up our code to take out of date references and
Okay.
recodify it.
Then, Mr. Chair, and then my comment, right, thank you for that clarification. I don't think that was communicated, so I appreciate that. And then I think what I would say then is, yeah, if we could go back, I understand the purpose of what we need to do today, and that's all fine, but as Corp Council is going through these, maybe it would be beneficial to also look at updating what needs to be updated as well, and making it, just having a more broad discussion on where these things were adopted in 2004, is that what you said, versus 2022. So, thank you. 94, thank you.
And if there are specific ones, if we have a list, it helps versus then going through each one with the county board. We could be here a long time, but we're happy to take a look at anything.
Elizabeth?
Yeah, just to follow up on that too, I'm hoping these are guidelines and that we have room for discretion, case by case. Example would be G2, rabies vaccination is required for all dogs. There are many dogs who are reactors to rabies, and then vets generate a letter that your dog cannot receive vaccinations as per that you could kill them. So I'm hoping that we have mechanisms built in that in case by case, we would be able to legally allow somebody to put forth, because I know they can't specify every case, but does this give us that wiggle room and discretion for an example such as that?
Yes, I mean, all law enforcement officers, our sheriff's department, our deputies have discretion in citing. You know, everyone that is caught speeding doesn't get a speeding citation. Same with, the rabies vaccine. If a deputy, it usually comes up in a dog bite situation, but there's a dog bite, the deputy looks into, is there rabies vaccination? They're not vaccinated, but they produce some proof, or they say, well, let me get a letter from my vet saying that my dog can't be vaccinated. I can't see a deputy issuing a citation in that circumstance. Could they? Probably, but with citation discretion, I don't think it would happen.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dave Engelbert?
Yes, I guess the final explanation here by Sean is good for any of these that we're raising issue with. I was probably on the board in '94 when that inline skating came about. I don't recall the situation, but I'm thinking it came through some complaints or some consideration of danger, whether it was on the city streets, maybe not the city, but county roads or whatever. And I think that discretion of the sheriff still applies to those situations. There's times when human behavior doesn't fit the traffic patterns of roads. I live close to DK. I've seen go-karts riding on the road. Well, I don't know if that's listed specifically, but I don't think many of us would feel the go-karts belong there either. So, I mean, there's, the issues with UTVs right now. And I think it's really fine that the sheriff has some discretion and can deal with those situations.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a big difference between, riding on the side of a highway and riding in the middle of a lane of traffic. And there is citation discretion.
Dave, if I could add to that,
Sure.
I guess we just made a change in the traffic ordinance for County D, lowering the speed for 45. And that's because of a couple of individuals living there that felt it wasn't safe for them. So we apply rules at different times, different circumstances.
Anybody else? Okay, we will go to the voter board. This passes on a vote of 20 yes, 1 absent. Thank you. Ordinance 2022-13, amendment of chapter 35 Door County Code. Joel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd also like to make a motion to approve mandatory ordinance to 2022-13 code section 35. And
All right. 35 was required when we changed 31. What 35 is, it's the authority to issue citations. It lists who can issue those citations, what the citation forfeiture amount will be and can be. So this really was when 31 was updated. This was also required because we did include a number of things within 31. There was a differentiation between when a health officer or land use service director can issue citations versus law enforcement need to be specified, as well as the minimum or range of forfeitures for those violations were not changed, but were differentiated. Instead of making all of 31 one forfeiture amount, it's changes depending on whether it's a nuisance or a public safety type of violation.
Sure.
If you don't mind, John,
No,
add
not at
some
all.
too. So, and this is one of those things, just in terms of process, that maybe we should have gave context before we started. So again, as you know, we're going through all of our ordinances. And again, it's called codification. So again, we're going to go through, and through that process, we'll go through each chapter. We'll make the updates to that chapter. We'll bring it through committee. So future reference, when they'll go through, depending on which department it falls underneath the umbrella, when you go through that ordinance, that'd be your chance to look at it, but then also have an opportunity to say, hey, well, that seems really out of date. Why do we have that there? You can ask those types of questions. But then ultimately we'll come to the county board, far as adoption or updating that. In this case, what you're looking at for this one, if you go to the last page of your packet 49, you'll see that appendix. So this one will actually come back multiple times because again, we just started. So you're just looking at the red line section for that chapter 31. But as we start going through all those other ordinances, we may be reviewing those fees and assessments at that point in time. So this, in your mindset, this one might be coming back multiple times as we make those updates. But again, it's just in terms of the process of, as you go chapter by chapter, you'll start to see those references and you'll start to see those updates. So I just want to get you familiar with what the process will be. As we get these done, you'll start seeing chapter after chapter coming forward, and depending on where those updates, it might impact other chapters. So you say, well, why do we do it all at once? Well, it's a process and it depends on where the references are and so forth that will make those updates. So I just want to give you a context of how this is kind of going to move forward.
Dave Henigal?
Since this is a fairly new concept, which is a smart thing to do, which is basically we're going through ordinances that are relatively dated. We finally have the opportunity with an individual that has been dealing with them for a very long time. And it's always I want to get to, and now he's getting to it. Can we, I didn't like having less than a week to be able to try to read the old one and try to read the new one and comprehend the differences. Can we, like 2 weeks before it's going to be on the agenda, get a notice, an email sent out to us, just reminding and a link to the chapter that we're going through? I can't really do anything justice this way.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think that's a problem at all. We've had these for.
Yep, we can get it in front of you. And again, we're trying to make updates too. There are certain things, hey, we want another month. There's nothing urgent with these matters. It's just a process that we're going through. And like I said, there's certain chapters where we get to this level and there are significant questions. There's no issue with referring it back. Unless there's something that's time sensitive, we'll mention that to you. But again, that's what you said. We're going through a lot of old ordinances, making those updates. So if we need more time, we can definitely do that. So, but we'll try, we can do the first process. So once it gets through committee, if the committee makes that update, usually, depending on which committee it is, we usually have a minimum of 2 weeks because most of them are the first week. So if we have that, then we can send them out in advance.
I do recognize that. My intent was to say we're going to be doing a revamp in the December meeting of chapter 12. I'm not necessarily, I do recognize that the actual revamp may not be ready till shortly before the actual meeting, but at least what chapter we're dealing with a link to the original chapter so we can go back and look at it. One of the comments I didn't make earlier that I'll make now is the inline skate thing is fun because if any of us are of any age, we all know when inline skates came along, roughly in 90. And nobody on their right mind, and I'm not a roller rink guy, would ever ride with standard roller wheels out on the road. They know better. But one of the things, as he brought up, is about 10 years ago, a lot more of the cross-country people got paid the big bucks for the nice quality inline variations of cross-country ski that for about a month from now, we're going to start seeing them all over the road again. Not so much in Door County, but I've seen them in much more denser neighborhoods. So, but I really would appreciate a much earlier advance.
We can do that.
Morgan?
So outside of a big overhaul like you're doing now, where we're doing chapter by chapter, how often do we update these otherwise? Is this something that we do routinely, or are we gonna just have chapter 31 be as is until we have another chunk of time to revamp it?
In practice, the way it usually goes is it's updated on an as needed basis. There's an issue comes up, we need to address it. We get the amendment done, we bring it back before the board. I don't think it would hurt to put a complete review on a routine schedule.
Okay.
It is a lot of work to go through it and to cross-reference everything that needs to be cross-referenced, which is why it is not done as often as it probably should be.
Sure.
But yeah, my hope is to not let this go another decade without being looked at.
Got it.
And to look at it on a more routine basis.
Cool. Thank you.
Mhm.
Anybody else? We'll go to the voter board. That's passed on a vote of 20 yes, 1 absent. Is that a $25 ring? Special reports, none. New business, any oral committee reports? Any review of committee minutes? Review of vouchers, claims, and bills. Any questions? Announcements, we have two. Our next county board meeting is Tuesday, November 15th and 16th if necessary. That's our annual budget hearing and meeting, beginning at 9 a.m. We also have, and I'll have Jason come up and verify this, but starting now, I assume, or in the very near future, as we travel with our notepads or our little computer tablets, we're going to have to use two-factor authentication as we're traveling on the road, for those of you that are familiar with it. And that's something that Google is now requiring of us as we travel outside the local area. You have any questions? Jason, you want to add anything?
Yeah. Could you use the mic, please?
Like a lot of the antivirus companies, they've gone into like some pattern behavioral recognition, right? So if they see that your Chromebook is being signed into in Wisconsin, and more specifically this general area all the time, and then magically you're being seen in California, it trips the system into thinking, hey, wait a minute, did somebody compromise your account? So we had it happen recently, and frankly, for lack of better terms, we were unprepared for that type of situation because we don't have a method for you to like secondarily authenticate yourself. So ultimately what we're going to ask for you here is we think the best way and how we solved it in the field was to add a cell phone number to your account on the backside. And then what happens is you get a text message that says, hey, we've just noticed a sign in. Is this you? And it literally asks you, is this you? And you hit yes, and you're in. Nothing changes. When you don't have that, there's no way to authenticate you a second time. And the system now thinks we're trying to do something shady. So we like to get it done ahead of time so nobody has these similar issues in the future.
So if you haven't already, would you please provide your cell phone number to Jill, and she will get it to Jason.
I don't want her to have my number.
Okay, then give it to Jason direct. Any questions on that? Okay, thank you, Jason.
If you want discount, come on out.
And if anybody would like the 22-23 directory, Wisconsin County Officials Directory, it's available in Jill's office. Anything else? You're good? A motion to adjourn would be in order. Okay. We have a motion and second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?